So now we're going to talk about the habits of yogis in terms of all parts of the self. In the very first lesson we talked about how energy works, and that energy starts to work on a pulsation, on a polarization. We have North Pole, South Pole. And we also talked about spanda a little later down, and how spandex, right? We've got the expand and contract, so the energy is moving up and it's moving down, it's moving out and it's moving in. So we're in this world of pulsation. If we look at that pulsation on the midline, crown to root, right? We're just looking at it right now from this perspective. But if we look at it from this perspective, from the top of the head, right? We look at it, we turn the whole thing on the side. What we see is that a line turned the other way, turned this way, it becomes a point, right? Point's just going this way. So to understand the 5 bodies from a yogic perspective, we want to understand that this is the middle, this center, this is consciousness. This is just consciousness, which is it's infusing the center. And right around consciousness is what we call the bliss body, the Anandamaya Kosha, and it's an actual sheath of the self. When people talk about mind, body, and spirit, when we talk about spirit, we're talking about that bliss body, that it's the most etheric aspect of the self. The sheath of consciousness has these bodies surrounding it, all the way out to the physical body, which we'll get to in a minute. And these are called sheaths. If you think of the knife is consciousness, and the sheath around the knife, that's the body. So this is the spiritual body that's surrounding the light of consciousness. Now right around that is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, and that means the intuitive body. That's our intuition. So when you have a sense of like, I'm not ready to do that yet, but you do it anyways, and then you get hurt, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, however it shows up, right? And you're like, I knew better. What was that? That was the intuitive body. Okay, next one out, we have the mental emotional body. Your thoughts, right? If we're now in the realm of thoughts and how they attune to emotions. Often it'll come, is the emotion first or the thought first? The thought carries the emotion carries thought. We start to see them very interconnected. That's another layer of the self. Again, these are sheaths, just like a sheath goes around a knife, right? And these are these layerings of the self. This is a very old yoga concept. These are the koshas, which literally just mean the sheaths. The next layer out is the energy body. We call it the pranic body. Pranamaya Kosha. This is the Anandamaya Kosha, or the bliss sheath. This is the intuitive body, the Vijnanamaya Kosha. That's kind of a cool word. Oops, Vijnana. That Jna, that sound is knowledge, and it's knowledge reflecting on itself. The mental emotional body, this is the Maya Kosha, Mano, it means mind. The Pranamaya Kosha, many of you know the word prana, the word energy. It's the energetic body. And very finally, this last sheath, this last layering of the self is the food body. It's called the Ana Maya Kosha, and Ana just means food. You stop eating, you shrink. I got the cats down here in Mexico where we're recording. And we've got the old cat who showed up on the property about 12 years ago, and then we got the new cat who showed up in our greenhouse when we were away in Mexico last year. We went back to Idaho, and there's all these kittens in the greenhouse. We kept one. That's Ezzy. And the cats down here, they're acting neurotic. And the first thing I do with neurosis is I starve it. I don't recommend this for humans, but for animals it's great. So we just simply took away the food. We took away the food body to see if that would balance the energy and that would balance their emotions. And within 12 hours, they're totally fine. The neurosis falls away, and they're back in tune, they're back in sync. We shifted the energy to shift the physical body. We shifted the food to shift the energy, to shift the emotions. That's just one example. Obviously, there's a zillion. So what we want to understand from the yogic perspective, we talked a lot about hygiene in terms of the daily rhythms and in terms of the habits. So now what we're going to do is take that and we're going to apply it to these different layers of the self. I just want to circle the Sanskrit words so that they're easier to see. Okay, there. And then I'm going to write food. Okay, so we've got intuition, we've got bliss, we've got emotions and thoughts, we've got energy, and we've got food. Our habits need, and hygiene is really habits, our body hygiene, habits need to attune to all 5 koshas. If you want to experience health and you want to experience awake living, and you leave out a kosha, like a hygiene practice, a habit practice for that kosha, it's not going to go well. You're not going to have access. You're not going to be able to integrate all parts. Consciousness is at the center. It wants to move all the way through. It wants to infuse all 5 koshas and have direct communication from the cells, from the matter, back to energy, back to spirit, right? So the physical energy of the body, the outside, that wants to be infused with consciousness. And when that happens, there's health and there's vitality. And we feel great, strong, clear. When there's not, because there's some murk or muck in one of these bodies and we're not having the habitual practices, the hygiene practices to clear them, there's a lack of integration. There's a lack of integrity. And so that's what we're going to look at, is why the habits are so crucial for 5-body hygiene. So let's take them one by one. We've already reviewed them. So the food body habits we already know. We already know we're not supposed to snack throughout the day. We're not supposed to eat a lot of food late at night. We can refine that and say, well, we're actually supposed to maybe eat 2 to 4 times a day and only have water between meals. We're not supposed to just kind of have a little bit here and there. That disrupts the food body. Other things for the food body are sleep. We know the food body needs 8 hours of sleep a night. Without that, the physical body, the food body, is not strong. Okay, now let's look at the energy body, the pranic body. Now the pranic body has different needs than the food body. It's not fed by nutrients, it's fed by prana. So when you take a deep breath in and you stand up and you let the prana start to align your physical body, you start to feel not just the front of your lungs but the back of your lungs. And you start to allow energy to consciously move downward, to drop energy down before it rises up. Now you're feeding the energy body. So we want to do that for 20 minutes in the morning before we eat any food. Preferably after we've hydrated and pooped, right? And there's actually physical space. There's some room for the prana to move. And then we want to move the prana. And some people will do this in a seated pranayama practice, a seated breathing practice, where you're just sitting and deeply breathing for 20 minutes. Or you're doing the alteration of the nostrils with nadi shodhana. There's a number of different pranayama practices. We can also do this through sun salutations. Inhale, stretch up, touch the sky. Exhale, bow forward, touch the earth. Inhale, lift your chest, look up. Exhale, step your left foot back, right? Inhale, step your right foot back. Now stretch back into downward dog. Fully exhale. Inhale into plank. Exhale into chaturanga. Inhale into cobra. Exhale into downward facing dog. Inhale, left foot forward. Exhale, right foot forward, fully bow. Inhale, stretch your arms up. Exhale into samastitihi. Right? What is that? That's simply an energy practice. It's the pulsation, right? And now you're going to see a lot of repetition in what we've learned so far. There's the pulsation between the poles. We've got spandex all over the place here. We've got the expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. If that doesn't happen 20 minutes in the morning, after hydration and poop, before food, we're not flossing, if you will, the pranic body. And we're not going to have as much energy that day. As Westerners, we're taught that we get energy from food. And that's true, but it's only part of the story. We get energy straight from energy. We get energy straight from breathing in good, clean, fresh air. We get energy from circulating the oxygen, the prana, through all cells. And we get energy from alleviating waste. Many people don't know this intellectually, but they know this physically. You wake up, you hydrate, you have a great bowel movement, and you feel energy in your colon. It feels scintillating. There's a scintillating effect after you have a good bowel movement. And if you actually feel it, you'll feel like, wow, there's energy in here. Yes, and that's part of the balance of the energy body. So if we don't completely eliminate our fecal matter in the morning, which is an 18-inch elimination, we won't feel that full drop of energy. We won't feel the scintillation of prana now dropping into the colon area. It's a subtle energy movement. And we just won't feel as great for the day. Ask anyone with chronic constipation and they will tell you that they would love to have that scintillation effect in their colon. So a lot of these habits are tied together. There's a lot of overlap here. And what I want you to learn right now is that for the pranic body to experience hygiene, for this sheath or this kosha, it's not negotiable. You have to wake up and move and breathe after eliminating for 20 minutes. And that's enough to just refresh, to coordinate, to integrate for the day. All right, the next body, the mental body, mental emotional body, needs to be clear on the pranic side. So if you haven't moved the physical body, if you're not fueling the food body with good food and good sleep, the mental body doesn't have a shot. It's got so much stagnation then on this side. That stagnation just crushes it. Energy moves from subtle to gross. And gross energy can start to just basically stagnate the subtler energies. And that's, most of you have experienced this on your yogic path, where you start to do more yoga and you start to do meditation and you start to experience a lot more subtle energy. And you remember who you were. And you remember what your reality was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, for some of you, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And just how gross your awareness is. And I don't mean disgusting, I just mean very dense, very stable, that you couldn't actually perceive the bliss. You had less awareness of your intuition. And it almost would seem like, wow, I was only living in part of myself. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. When the energy body and the food body isn't clean, isn't on hygiene, right? It's like when you don't brush your teeth, it feels gross. When don't have these basic hygiene practices around how to eat, when to sleep, how to move the physical body, right? When to move the physical body with breath. Then what happens is they just start to crush on the mental emotional patterns. So the mental emotional patterns will be more negative than life positive, because the life positive nature of the mental emotional body is going to come through the prana itself, and it's going to come from direct intelligence through the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is sandwiched on either side of. All right. Practices for the mental emotional body, meditation. Very basic practice. But all the physical, I just want to keep emphasizing, all the physical and energetic practices are going to help a life positive experience in the mental emotional body. Now, what is meditation? What is sitting in silence? When we sit, we don't pay any attention to our thoughts. And we actually don't pay any attention to our emotions. And we sit regardless if we want to or not. We sit regardless if our mind is busy or our mind is still. And we just don't pay attention to the thoughts. We don't give all of the emotions, whether it's worry, whether it's anger, we don't give it our attention. We don't let it rule the roost. Instead, we sit and just say, this too shall pass. This is just another wave of the splenda. It's just another pulsation arising in consciousness. But who I am is consciousness itself. Who I am is the center, is beingness. And so I'm just going to be and let the chaos do the chaos. Let the monkey mind do the monkey mind. And I'm not going to pay any attention. I'm not even going to care. And when that happens, we start to get some breathing room in the mental emotional body. As we get more breathing room, that's like the floss. That's like the hygiene practice. Flossing your teeth. That's what I mean when I say it's like the floss. Either you're a flosser or you're not. If you're meditating, you're flossing your mental emotional body. And now you have half a chance when a thought comes in and you're like, ugh, I don't need to pay any attention to that. You have more of a chance to let that go. Or you have a worry come in and you think, I don't want to pay any attention to that. And you have a better chance of letting that worry go. Instead of letting that turn into a samskara, letting it turn into one of those habitual patterns that repeats and repeats and grows as like increases like. All right. And the next side, actually I want to mention too, in terms of hygiene for the mental, emotional body, learning is so key. And I'm going to write it down over here if I can make my pen work. Let me find a pen that works. Okay, learning. And we know this, there's studies now, people like, are they doing Sudoku puzzles or different crossword puzzles as they get older? Are they stimulating their mind? Because if there is, there's a greater chance that their mind will continue to work. Use it or lose it. There's a term now that's become popular called life learners. And it actually came out of a movement called the unschooling movement of people that just weren't as into traditional education and felt that we could just learn straight from life. And what's so beautiful about this concept of life learner is it's very much attuned that we're free, svatantria, we're free to choose. And we're free to choose that which is interesting. There's a great word for our interest in Sanskrit, and it's raga, and it's desire, right? So raga, where is our interest? What are we attached to in a good life, positive way, right? Where is our attachment? What are we interesting? What do we want? And if we pay attention to that, I want to learn this next. I could tell you 3 computer programs I want to learn next to be able to use so that I can work more efficiently. I can tell you 3 things I want to learn in terms of I swim and I paddleboard, and there's certain alignment principles in the shoulder that I haven't mastered that I want to learn to have more efficient strokes. I'm very interested in what I'm learning, regardless of what aspect of life it's appearing in, right? And so when we look at it that way, and we start to see we're alive, we're changing, we're growing, and we start to identify ourselves more as a verb, more as an ing, learning, right? That we're more in action than we are a static person. I'm Kate, and I like this, and I know this, right? That all just reflects the past. When we start to be in more of a verb, we start to be more interested in what we're doing, and what's coming next, and what we're learning. That stimulates the mental, emotional body, and that's like floss, right? It's basically a way of attuning, of optimizing who we are. And what that does is it starts to move a lot of energy. It's exciting to learn a new thing. My child is into gymnastics, and now she can do a backward walkover, and she can do a backward handspring. And when she learns a new thing, she runs home, Mom, watch what I can do. Look what I learned. And she shows me what she learned. And there's an energy to it. There's an excitement to it. And then it goes in a direction. It goes to the next level. And so just pay attention right now. Like, what are you more interested in learning? Or have you kind of stepped out of learning? All right, intuition, the Vijnana Maya Kosha, Vijnana. The intuitive body needs also its own hygiene practices. A lot of the optimization of intuition happens around listening. So if we don't have time and space to listen to our own intuition, if we make decisions more based on our thoughts, like, I think I should do this, or this is on the schedule right now, so that's what's going to get done because it's on the schedule, and our gut is saying, like, or our heart, or our throat, or wherever we feel intuition, is saying, like, no, I'm not ready yet, no, it's not the right timing. And we override that because we're so used to making decisions from our mental thought body, we're used to making decisions from our Mana Maya Kosha and not our Vijnana Maya Kosha, then we're not listening. So how do we have practices that listen? Meditation's a great one. Also the energy practices of doing breath body practices, so we're actually in our body. The intuitive body often speaks through a physical feelings, through a constriction in the throat, through a heaviness in the heart, or an expansion of the heart, a pressure on the forehead, a tightness in the lower back, a sinking feeling in the gut, or butterflies in our tummy. That's the language of our intuition, and we all know it, and we've all got it. How much do we listen and make decisions from there? And not exclusively, but in connection. These are all in connection. There's not a hierarchy here. It's not one's better than the other. The intuition's got to work with the mind and the thoughts and the emotions. It's got to pick up But if we're not listening, we're not tapped into intuition, and chances are we're making life harder for ourselves. We're living a little bit against the natural flow of intelligence, which is always already available. Sitting in meditation, very good for heightening intuition and just feeling, noticing when you sit, what am I feeling? How am I feeling about this situation? How am I feeling about this relationship? Which is different than a strict meditation where we don't pay any attention to thoughts and emotions. This would be different. This would be more of an intuitive body type meditation or seated practice. Where you're sitting and you're feeling like, how do I feel? Oh, I'm apprehensive. What does apprehension feel like? Apprehension feels like a little bit of tightness right below my heart and my top ribs squeezing in. That's what it feels like to me right now. Those are the practices that help us develop our intuition. Speaking from intuition is very important. So if you're noticing you're having a tough time in a relationship, or you're wanting a relationship to change and grow, and you don't speak to that, you hold that in. But in your mind you're like, I wish I could just say. When you actually stand and speak from that intuitive place of saying like, hey, I really want this relationship to change and grow. All of a sudden you'll feel a sense of energy movement, and that can be very scary. It can take, as my friend Dr. Claudia Welch says, it can take a lot of courage. You may need to be brave. But as you build that habit of courage, soon it just starts to show up, and you're able to speak and live from your intuition in connection with consciousness, in connection with your thoughts and your emotions. All right, and lastly, the bliss body. The bliss body is the Ananda Maya Kosha, A-N-A-N-D-A. And the Ananda Maya Kosha requires, again, its own hygiene practices. Each of these is linked to the 5 elements. Of course, in Ayurveda and yoga, everything repeats and cross-intersects and reinforces. So the Ananda Maya Kosha, this relates to the element of ether. The Jnana-maya Kosha relates to the element of air. The Mano-maya Kosha is fire. The Prana-maya Kosha is water. And the food body is made of the earth. Right? Our food comes from the earth. The practice is to clear the etheric body. Sitting in silence, having time, listening, all the ones that come from the body before will be here now. But there's a special practice of just complete letting go. Letting go of all 5 bodies, even letting go of ether itself, of the space in which everything is arising. And simply being awareness itself, being the center, being consciousness. I sometimes call it awaring. It doesn't make sense. I'm making up a word, right? Awaring, I'm going to write it down. Where we're aware of awareness, and we're just inging it. We're just being it. We're just being awareness. And it's a very subtle meditation practice. It often takes quite a bit of practice to get to that practice, but it's directly perceiving as consciousness itself. And as that happens, there's a lot more pleasure. We actually feel waves of pleasure move through the bliss body. A lot of the practices from Tantra are to awaken the bliss body, to awaken that when we're in sync, when we're harmonized, that there's undulating waves of bliss. Right? And people that meditate a lot, you can see it. You can see this natural, easeful joy shining through their eyes, and that's the bliss body coming straight through. You can even feel it in the etheric field around such beings, around such people. Right? As they've dropped enough of the persona, and it's just being coming through. That's because they've done these etheric body practices, these etheric hygiene practices. So I hope that helps motivate you to do these really basic dinacharya, the basic daily rhythm habits of looking at, okay, there's habits that help me align with my koshas, that help me align these different parts of who I am. And when I do that, and I don't just do it today, but I do it, remember the dinacharya, the daily rhythm, it's like a record player. It goes around and around, and I do it day in, day out, day in, day out, and I start to influence the trajectory in which I'm moving through time and space. And it changes the way I age.